At 92, she walked the runway in silver stilettos, wrinkles glinting like jewelry, not flaws. Carmen Dell'Orefice never looked young, not in the way magazines wanted. She looked like a marble statue, classic, cold, unforgettable.
This woman is my idol. She doesn't even know she's been a mentor to me.
At 15, her face was already architecture. At 90, it was a monument. She made age feel less like a countdown and more like a runway, long, dramatic, and entirely hers.
This woman is so gorgeous.
She didn't soften for the world. She sharpened. Her voice was velvet, her wit was dry, and her hair turned white like it had been waiting its whole life to. Designers didn't use her to sell youth. They used her to sell eternity. She became fashion's longest-running secret, a woman who grew older but never lesser. Men came and went like collections. Money arrived, vanished, reappeared. But Carmen stayed in season. Not because she tried to stay young, but because she made age look expensive, like wisdom dipped in La Mer. She was elegance with fangs. A lady, yes, but one who knew how to cash a check and end a conversation. But what the world didn't see was the girl on the bus in borrowed shoes, heading to her first photo shoot, already practicing how to survive. Early life. Carmen was born during the Great Depression, but she never belonged to scarcity. Even as a child in New York, her presence felt too cinematic for ration lines and subway sweat. Her mother, a Hungarian ballerina, moved like a question mark, elegant but always searching. Her father, an Italian violinist, disappeared like a wrong note. She learned early that beauty doesn't protect you, but it does get you noticed. They lived in a cold apartment where heating came from boiled water and ambition. Carmen wore hand-me-down coats with loose buttons and walked to school like she was already late to something bigger. Her body betrayed her early. Tall, thin, angular. The girls called her olive oil. The boys didn't know what to do with her. Even mirrors seemed unsure. But her mother saw something marketable in the silence. At 13, Carmen was scouted on a bus. At 15, she was in vogue. At home, they had no phone, so the magazine had to send a messenger to summon her to shoots. Her first paycheck paid for family groceries. Her second paid for shoes that actually fit. She didn't grow up. She ascended. Her childhood wasn't lost. It was traded in. For every click of the camera, she lost a little warmth and gained a little shine. While her classmates learned geometry, Carmen was learning how to pose through hunger, how to look like desire when all she felt was distance. By 16, she was eating lettuce leaves and sleeping on trains between jobs. But she wasn't fragile. She was forged, like glass heated until it became crystal. The world looked at her face and saw softness, but Carmen knew softness was a style. Survival was the truth. First love, heartbreak, fall. Before there was heartbreak, there was hunger. The kind you don't feel in your stomach, but in your soul. Carmen married young. She was 17, and the man was older, stable, handsome in that post-war, square-jawed way. He gave her a ring and promises. She gave him her pause. They had a daughter, a brief sense of peace, and then distance. The kind you can't measure in miles. Their love faded like old perfume. Still sweet, but no longer present. She had to keep modeling to support them, her beauty now both lifeline and leash. The symbol of it all was a pair of silk gloves. Soft, elegant, always worn in public. But inside, her hands were calloused from holding too much together. When the marriage ended, it wasn't dramatic, just cold, practical. A woman deciding she'd rather be alone than unheard. She became the mother, the father, the provider, the muse. And yet, even as the world admired her grace, she lived with the quiet ache of wanting to be chosen for more than her angles. There were lovers after, a few long enough to leave toothbrushes, one or two long enough to hurt. Salvador Dali painted her. Norman Parkinson adored her. But no one really stayed. The men were fascinated by her image, but none of them learned the woman behind it. And through it all, the gloves remained. Slipped on before meetings, shoots, dates. They became armor. Not to hide flaws, but to keep from giving too much. She learned to smile with her eyes and say little. She became fluent in elegance and fluent in exits. She didn't fall apart. She folded neatly, like a love letter you reread, then tuck away. Reinvention, iconic route. The world had tried to age her out. Carmen simply refused. Modeling faded for a moment in her 30s. Magazines wanted fresh faces, not timeless ones. So she pivoted. She modeled intermittently, took jobs on her terms, raised her daughter, and waited. Not quietly, but elegantly. Then came the return. At 49, she posed nude for Playboy. Not for shock, for sovereignty. The body the industry thought expired was now art. It was scandalous, then revered. Designers started whispering her name again. Carmen, like a spell. Bill Blass, Thierry Mugler, Isaac Mizrahi. They didn't just hire her, they studied her. At 60, she opened Runway shows. Not as nostalgia, but as a statement. Her walk was slower, sharper, more controlled. Every step was a reminder. The rules never applied to her. She wasn't part of the industry. She was its exception. A story whispered backstage by models who just turned 20 and felt the clock ticking. One season, she walked in a velvet column gown, hair silver, lips crimson. No filler, no filter. The crowd rose, not for youth, but for mastery. She did commercials, editorials, international covers, again. This time, not as the next thing, but as the standard. She reinvented herself not by changing, but by waiting for the world to catch up. While others chased relevance, Carmen let it orbit her. Every comeback was a reintroduction, and every reintroduction was a reminder she wasn't modeling clothes. She was modeling survival, with a smirk. Style, activism, values. Carmen dressed like every day was a return, not a comeback. Those were too loud. But a quiet re-entry into a world that still hadn't figured her out. Her wardrobe was monochrome magic, dove gray coats, black cigarette trousers, ivory silk turtlenecks that grazed her jaw like a secret. Her signature white hair wasn't a statement, it was a throne. Each morning was ritual. She steamed her clothes, not just to smooth fabric, but to prepare herself for precision. Lipstick was a non-negotiable. Always red, always matte. She wore perfume not for allure, but for memory. The same scent always. Something powdery and sharp, like nostalgia cut with ambition. Fashion was never decoration. It was authorship. And she wrote herself into every frame. Carmen didn't just get dressed. She declared herself. No riffles, no fuss, just structure. She believed in silhouette over sparkle, tailoring over trend. She wore wide belts to control her silhouette and sunglasses to control the gaze. But her quiet defiance wasn't limited to cloth. She used her presence as protest. On panels, she spoke about how fashion devours women, then pretends to mourn them. She rejected plastic surgery not from judgment, but from principle. Her face told the truth, and she wanted it to be seen. She supported aging models behind the scenes, writing letters, making calls, opening doors. She believed grace could be a political act, and that survival, when done beautifully, was its own form of resistance. Her home was minimalist, but never cold. A bowl of fresh lemons on a marble table, a drawer of opera gloves, each pair folded like old letters. She kept her modeling contracts in a worn folder beside the tea, proof that power ages best when it's earned. She didn't scream her values. She wore them. One pearl earring, one bold lip, and a lifetime of knowing her worth.
Legacy, legal drama, present. She was 80 when she sued her financial advisor. Not for pennies, for millions. Decades of earnings had disappeared into silence. Bad bets and trust misplaced in tailored suits. The world gasped. Carmen didn't flinch. She walked into court in a black turtleneck and pearls, looking less like a victim and more like a verdict. The courtroom wasn't new to her, just another set, another stage. She sat tall, listening, eyes narrowed like she was reading the credits of a film she'd never agreed to be in. She testified with the same voice that once sold perfume and pantyhose, low, deliberate, practiced. She wasn't angry, she was exact. The press called it her final act of rebellion, but Carmen never thought of herself as rebellious, just allergic to being underestimated. The case became a symbol, an aging woman refusing to be erased not just from fashion, but from finance, from her own life. She won. Not just the case, but a new kind of attention. Journalists wrote features about ageless beauty, but Carmen corrected them. I age. I just don't retreat. Even now, she works. Carefully chosen campaigns, select interviews. Her Instagram, run with surgical precision, feels more like a gallery than a feed. Young models post side-by-sides with her vintage covers. Older women wear red lipstick again. She no longer needs the industry, but the industry still needs her. She is proof that elegance can age, and that relevance is not a season, it's a decision. In 2022, she appeared at Fashion Week in a bone-white gown, walking with a cane carved from mahogany. Not because she couldn't walk without it, but because she could, and chose not to. It wasn't weakness, it was punctuation. The crowd stood before she reached the end of the runway, not for nostalgia, but for presence. Carmen didn't just live history, she wore it, walked through it, sued it, and still made it look expensive. Style, philosophy, beliefs. Carmen believed that how you dress is how you declare war, quietly. Her wardrobe was less about beauty, more about boundaries. A sharply tailored coat said, "Don't interrupt me." A nude heel said, "I got here myself." She didn't believe in trends. Trends expired. Carmen preferred permanence. A white blouse starched within an inch of its life. A matte red lip applied with the focus of a surgeon. A pair of gloves always nearby, not to conceal age, but to control energy. She wore jewelry like punctuation. One cuff, one earring, never both. If people stared, it wasn't for symmetry, it was for the message. Carmen dressed like she had somewhere better to be, even if she was already there. Every morning, she got ready in silence. No music, no distractions, just the steam from the iron and her reflection, wrinkled, regal, and very much alive. Her cane was mahogany, her perfume was Guerlain, her rules were hers. She once said, "If you're waiting for the world to approve your reflection, you'll be late to your own life." She didn't dress rich. She dressed ready. Ready to sue you, ready to outlive you, ready to take her coffee black and her compliments lightly. To Carmen, beauty wasn't youth. Beauty was discipline. Confidence was tailoring. And power was wearing your history in public. Because nothing says unstoppable like a woman in her 90s wearing heels to lunch and knowing exactly when to leave. Legacy 2025 update. The gloves are still there, folded in a drawer lined with lavender tissue. Each pair holds decades of dinner parties, courtrooms, photo shoots, and whispered exits. They don't symbolize concealment anymore. They represent control, the soft kind, the permanent kind. In 2025, Carmen no longer walks runways. She doesn't need to. Her walk now lives in the posture of every woman over 60 who chooses silver hair and red lipstick, not apologies. Her interviews are rare. Her influence isn't. Brands reference her bone structure like it's intellectual property. Fashion schools teach her as a case study in longevity. And aging? It's finally marketing gold. But Carmen never sold aging. She just made it visible and charged extra. She's become the style oracle younger models visit, not for approval, but for clarity. They come for advice and leave with a sentence they'll carry for years. Something like, "Elegance is refusing to shrink just because the room gets small." And still, in her New York apartment, the lemons on the table are fresh. The contracts are filed beside the tea. The cane leans by the door. Not for need, but for punctuation. What started as survival became spectacle. What began in borrowed shoes ended in legend. And the gloves, they remain folded, not because she's finished, but because she taught the world how to hold itself a little higher. She aged, she evolved, she endured, and somehow she made all three look like art.